and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 267. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I am joined by resident old bastard, Chris Sadler.
Hello!
First up, we do have some housekeeping. As usual, you can check the episode notes for the timestamps if you want to jump straight to the topic at hand. Right. Also, this is our Patreon thank you episode, where we thank everyone by their real legal name that donates financially to patreon.com/retrowarriors. Right. And keeps the lights on and equipment rolling around here, which is just wonderful. Yeah. So thank you to all those wonderful people, and we will thank you individually.
And we appreciate that they always use their real legal names. Because
yes, it's definitely not an exercise in ridiculousness.
Oh, that would be
once
insane.
A month.
Well, they can't use fake names. I'm pretty sure that's a violation.
You can't lie on the internet.
Yeah, you can't do that.
It's
There's
against
an internet protocol,
law.
Right?
You could go. That's not what internet protocol is.
That's totally what internet protocol is. I think it's a violation of TCP/IP.
Yeah, if you lie about your Patreon name, they got all these protocols, but everyone just does whatever they want.
The Netscape police will show up.
My week,
yes,
I have been doing Saturn stuff, specifically Sega Saturn stuff,
good,
not
good.
you stuff.
I was very confused.
I've built an effigy of you, and I make it play Nintendo with me.
That's good.
That's what I feed it Twinkies and Coke Zero, and I make it play Super Nintendo.
Just bought a mannequin, you put a big bear hat on it, and you gave it a Coke Zero.
You will live on. Not that you're dead, but you'll also live on at my house in mannequin form.
That's good.
No, I've been getting my Sega Saturn up to snuff.
Nice.
I've got a new CD wallet and burned a bunch of new games for it, and I've been playing it again. I updated my copy of Pseudo Saturn, which is my flashed action replay, to the new version Pseudo Saturn Kai that adds a couple more features. Not a ton, but there's a few more.
Like what?
The biggest one that I was after was auto start. So whenever I turn my Saturn on, it boots to the Pseudo Saturn menu and then just boots the game without me having to sit down and push the button.
That's something.
Which is, it sounds silly, but it lets me in my head pretend that I'm not playing a burned pirated game. I also picked up a Saturn wireless controller, 2.4 gigahertz wireless controller from Retrobit.
Yeah.
And it arrived, and the face buttons and D-pad and everything on it are fantastic. The wireless connection works great, and the shoulder buttons suck bad.
That sucks.
And they use a different type of micro switch than the originals did, so they're way less springy. So they definitely feel wrong, but I can't really fault them for that because maybe the type of switch they used in the original Saturn isn't widely available, and the rest of it feels great. And at the end of the day, Saturn games don't really use the shoulder buttons a lot anyway. Right. So I'm not too heartbroken. My only problem
Unless
is
you're
that
playing Resident Evil.
Right. Which, why would I play Resident Evil on Sega Saturn?
Yeah, why would somebody do that?
What kind of idiot? Gosh. But the left shoulder button specifically seems misaligned, so it doesn't work every time you press it. So I reached out to Retrobit and was like, hey, my shoulder buttons, they're not as good as the originals, but more importantly than that, this one doesn't work all the time.
That's unfortunate.
And they didn't say anything for days and days and days and days.
Ugh.
And I started to get a little irate and be like, fuck Retrobit. Because in their packaging, it has this big thing that's like, don't send it back to the person you bought it from, email us, so on and so forth. And then finally they reached out and they were like, hey, sorry about the delay, COVID, whatever. Right. We're just going to mail you a whole new controller. What's your address?
Nice.
And I have not received it yet, so I can't say if the new one has the issue. But when they did finally reach out to me, which again, understandable delays, they were very accommodating and helpful. And if they can fix that shoulder button on whatever one they send me, then it's a pretty darn good wireless Saturn controller.
Nice.
I'm pretty excited about it.
Nice.
I also got Saturn emulation up and running on my PC, and by up and running, I mean I installed one RetroArch core, and it works flawlessly across the board with everything I've played at full speed.
Yeah, I still have problems with several of my games when I try to play them on any of the 3 RetroArch cores that I have tried.
I have played probably 2 or 3 dozen games on it, and I have not run into one that does not run at full speed with absolutely no issues.
My other issue is that my my Retrobit USB Saturn controller has so many issues with RetroArch on PC. Like, it does not want to get like it will recognize it as different types of controllers. At one point I plugged it in and it thought it was a DualShock 4. And I pretty much have to remap it every time I plug it in, which is increasingly frustrating.
Yeah, that's weird. That makes me wonder if it's RetroArch identifying it weird or if it's the controller identifying itself weird.
I have no idea.
But either way, strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, been playing a lot of Sega Saturn, a lot of Radiant Silvergun, a lot of the Street Fighter games on there. Just enjoying my Saturn and patiently waiting for Retro Gaming Cables to fix and re-release their Saturn HDMI adapter so I can get one of those and enjoy that. Also, I played, specifically I want to talk about Salamander 2 on Sega Saturn. We did our Salamander episode recently, and I went on and on about how great Salamander is, like real arcade Salamander. Again, not that Life Force is bad, and specifically not that the NES port of Life Force is bad, but it is a bad representation of the arcade version of Salamander, which is a very different game.
Right.
And someone in that episode in our write-ins, and I don't remember who it was, wrote in and said, well, Salamander 2 is better, and so I went and played Salamander 2, and I'll be damned, it's a really good game.
Nice. I'll have
Salamander 2 is great.
I'll have to check that out.
Great shmup. It's kind of got that sort of Darius thing going on where they use some sort of like 3D graphics.
Right.
And lots of voice.
Was it
also
like
kind of like Darius?
Like Gradius 4 does that?
I've not played Gradius 4. That is,
okay.
I think, the one of the 5 that I've not played. But it's really good. I've not played it enough to confirm whether or not I like it better than Salamander 1. But it's real good. I sat down and played through the whole thing and then started playing through it again. It's just a really, really good shmup. So highly, highly recommend Salamander 2. And I think it's only on Saturn. I think that's it.
I think it was on something else. I think it was some collection, like a Japanese PSP collection or something. But yeah.
Yeah, whatever it was ported to, get it and play it because it's awful darn fun. It's really good. That's about all I've been up to. It's just lots and lots of Sega Saturn.
Nice. So I got in a new NES game, that Jay and Silent Bob game. I got the physical cart in the mail. And
looks very cool.
Yeah.
I wish the game was better, but it's a nice looking cartridge.
It's an okay game. It's not like I have no frame of reference when it comes to brawlers, because anytime I play any brawler, I just feel like 90% of the game is move forward, punch another dude, move forward, punch another dude. And I know there's a lot more nuance than that. It's just my brain doesn't grasp it.
In some of them, there's more nuance. In Jay and Silent Bob on NES, there is not more nuance. I would say it's like a solid C NES game. You know, it's like one of those ones that you'd rent and play for a weekend and be like, I didn't hate it, and then probably never played it. Like, it's not bad, but
which,
it's not
in fairness,
good.
Was also my reaction to the Turtles arcade game, and I understand that's heresy in most people's eyes. But it's just...
I mean, is heresy just another word of saying that you're tremendously wrong? If so, then yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I put most brawlers at about that level. If there's not...
upsetting.
Yeah, I know. So...
Okay, you want to know how that feels, Saturn? Every JRPG is hide-lied. There, how do you feel now? Does that make you feel good?
That is
Dragon Quest is basically hide-lied, just so you know. I'm just going to throw...
I understand. I'm saying the problem is with me, not with the games. I am the one who does not detect the subtle differences. But regardless, so I immediately pulled it out and I tried to play it on my Retron 5 because I was being lazy. And I was like, this is already plugged in. I'm just going to do that. And it will not read it at all. Like, doesn't even try. And so just for fun, I tried it on the Retro Freak as well. That's mostly broken anyway. And it also does not recognize it. It doesn't see the ROM image at all. It just displays black screen. So then I was starting to get worried that it was the cart was bad. And then I put it in my NES and it did not read it. And I was like, oh no, maybe this is just like a parody cart and they're going to send me a ROM image as an email or something.
Oh, yeah.
But then I cleaned it out and then it loaded fine. So
I'm sorry. You had to clean a brand new NES game to make it work?
Apparently, yeah. I just pulled out the old-fashioned rubbing alcohol and cleaned it out.
NES game's so bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the NES, but come on.
Right?
There's...
the problem could have been that my 72-pin connector could have been dirty, and just the alcohol on the cartridge was enough to clean it off, enough to read it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But regardless, it did play, and that was neat to get to play a new NES game on an NES in my house in 2020. Yeah. That was interesting. But I spent way more time than that, way more time than I wanted, completely rehacking my Vita TV from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it got borked, right?
Because I screwed it up. So I was playing a game on there, and it had a fan translation, and I realized that my fan translation was out of date because this one shop near the end of the game was glitched out, and I couldn't buy anything because it just showed like garbage text and a price of a gajillion dollars. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't buy anything, which didn't matter. It was a useless shop, but you did have to buy something there for an achievement.
Oh no!
So I was
about to say, well, you were at the end of the game. Why'd you even bother? There you go.
So I was like, well, I better get that achievement, and so I went online and I was like, why can't I buy this thing? This game is broken, and immediately get to the fan translation page where they're like, we fixed this in version 1.1, which we released in 2019. I was like, oh, well, I just need to install this update then. And so I meticulously followed the instructions for the update. Step 1 was install this thing that allows the Vita to run patches, but I already had that installed, and I forgot that I obviously had it installed. I was already using a fan translation.
Right.
But I forgot that it was there. And so apparently having it installed twice prevents the Vita from opening any application at all.
Oh, no.
Except for the ones built into the Vita. Those will still run fine.
You basically had to flash it and restart then at that
point. Yeah. You just had to restore it back to factory default, and then downgrade it, and then install the custom firmware, and then just do everything from scratch. Fortunately, because I was using my Vita TV instead of an actual Vita, I have a USB drive plugged in, just a 128 gig flash drive. And I have it virtualizing as a Vita memory card. So the Vita TV thinks it has a 128 gig memory card, and that all of my games and save files are installed to it. And
excellent. So you kept those.
Everything was there. So as soon as I plugged that back in, it came right back up, and it was like nothing had happened, except for it was a clean hack, and the few things that I screwed up the first time weren't screwed up this time. So it is nice. It is running much better, and I started playing around with it more since I have this freshly rehacked Vita, and I found a thing. I think somebody in our chat had mentioned it months ago, but this application called PKGJ is absolutely phenomenal and makes having a hacked Vita so much better, because it just downloads whatever game you want, any region. It just downloads it as if it is a app store.
Oh, nice.
And so
it just finds it on the internet and just...
Yep. I think it pulls it from PSN, but I'm not sure.
Oh, my God.
But I...
wouldn't shock me. This is the company that gave my credit card away, didn't know that they did it, and then didn't tell me for 3 months.
Yeah.
So,
and then tried to make it up to you with 2 free PS3 games.
I mean, I took them, but I wasn't happy.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was, it is nice to have that on there, because when I originally hacked my Vita, I just meticulously ripped every single game card I have, and it took forever. So now, if my flash drive dies somehow, I can just download them through that, and it'll be easy peasy.
I want you to know that in the middle of us talking about that and mentioning Chivos, it occurred to me that if there's not a Weird Al parody style of Limp Bizkit song called "Did It All for the Chivos," I'm going to get really upset. If it doesn't exist, internet, get on that. You can have it for free. I don't even want royalties. You can have that. Let's do some news.
Yes, sir.
First up, Capcom producer Yoshinori Ono leaving the company.
Oh no!
And I don't. Was there a statement as to why? I don't. Or was it just? I think it was just They didn't. I don't think they said, did they?
If I remember right, they were just moving on to new pastures. Is as much as they said. If they said more than that, then I missed it in the statement, and I apologize.
Right. Next up, Analog offering a final batch of pre-orders for the NT Mini Noir. I believe it's already sold out, isn't it?
That sounds about right.
And it's still $500.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe get the retro USB AVS unless you just desperately need to connect to a CRT.
Was it retro USB that put out the AVS?
Yeah, retro USB. They're the ones that put out the AVS, and it, by all accounts, is a gret system.
Nice.
I keep thinking about getting one myself, but I have no reason to. So I'm just trying to invent a reason to buy one. Bandai Namco is celebrating Pac-Man's 40th anniversary with a kick-ass jacket.
Nice.
You know what I want to do when a video game character has an anniversary? Buy a jacket.
Yep, that was it. That was all you need is jacket.
Definitely not a collection of games or anything, just a jacket. It is a pretty cool jacket.
I said they should have just re-released Pac-Man Fever.
I'd be okay with just a Pac-Man collection of some sort.
That'd be great.
I mean, are there any Pac-Man collections?
Yeah,
that's just like
they're also teaming up with Arcade 1-Up for a Pac-Man arcade machine collection. That's
I don't want to buy a whole goddamn arcade machine.
Oh, well, then
I just want you to
then.
release like a 20.
And then you get this jacket.
How am I supposed to play Junior Pac-Man? The best Pac-Man. Hori's releasing 3 more colors of the Split Pad Pro, which is exciting to me.
Yeah.
I keep eyeing it and almost getting the Demon X Machina one that's on Amazon for like $45. Ooh. And I keep worrying that it's going to sell out before I buy it. So this means I don't have to worry about that. And they look nice and by all accounts are comfortable.
Yeah.
Fan remake of GoldenEye 007 receives cease and desist letter.
Yeah.
The project agrees to carry on under the name Project Ionus. Ionus? Ionus.
I don't know what they're going for, but they
I'm gonna go
had
with
to know
I-anus.
the jokes were coming.
Project Ionus.
Ionus. That's somebody made an Apple joke about it in the Discord, and I don't remember what the joke was, but it feels like it writes itself.
Yeah, they could just rename it to Project Low Hanging Fruit at this point. I mean, come on. Ionus? It's got to be Ionus. Ionus.
No, it's Ionus.
Ionus.
Yeah.
Great. SNK announces the MVS X, a $500, well, actually, it's a $449 arcade machine with a $50 riser that you can buy, preloaded with 50 games, none of which are Neo Turf Masters.
It's true.
I will say this, it does have probably the best Neo Geo collection lineup that we've seen yet between any of the Neo Geo X and the Mini and the SNK collections that have come out before. Like, this is by far the best, most diverse, robust lineup that we've seen. It is a 17-inch flat screen monitor in the device. It's going to weigh around 30 pounds. And I think its pre-orders start in September. It's supposed to ship in either October or November.
And some pages on their website said that it was pre-order for $4.99, and other pages said pre-order for $3.99.
Yeah, it's
the website looks janky.
I've been kind of dipping back into the Neo Geo community to see what the general consensus is. And there's not a lot of confidence that it's not just going to be
cash in. Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't just contract Arcade 1-Up to do it.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Yeah. They're already building the machines.
Yeah. Aesthetically, I want it because it looks like an MVS.
Right.
But I don't know that I could drop $500 on something that I'm not convinced of the quality. So
and also, you did just recently sell an MVS because you didn't have the room for it. So to drop $500 on something that is close to the size of the thing you didn't have room for not long ago feels silly.
The difference is I had to sell my MVS because I couldn't get it up the stairs.
Oh, that's true. This will be easier to get up the stairs.
Yep, there you go. Xbox Series X given a release date of November, surprising no one.
Right.
But what did surprise everyone is that Halo Infinite was delayed to 2021.
I imagine that's to deal with a lot of the jabs they've been getting at the graphic quality.
Yeah, I'm Halo's one of those things that they've not really released a bad Halo game in the franchise yet.
No.
But Halo Infinite has not looked super compelling to me yet. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm still blown away that they're releasing a new video game console in November of 2020 because this has been a hell of a year to release anything in.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes.
Right.
But as much as I want to bitch, the U.S. game industry broke sales records in second quarter with a 30% increase over the previous year. So maybe I'm just being pessimistic.
Right.
So I could just quit my complaining.
I want to know I want a breakdown. I want to see what it was that was improving those sales numbers. What is selling?
I'll say this. At least in the retro gaming space, everything is going up.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything used retro stuff right now
but that's
across
mostly
the board.
Used stuff.
True, but I mean it's all in a way it's all the same market. Video games is video games at some point. I think it's just that people are spending more leisure time at home right now. That has to be it. Is that yes, a lot of people are hurting. Yes, there are a lot of problems going on right now.
Right.
But at the end of the day, we're still all spending a lot more time at home this year.
Yeah.
And maybe video games have become a higher priority for some people than they used to be. I don't know. But
I would have thought that the big success of Animal Crossing could have potentially hurt some of its competitors since it has no microtransactions. So it wouldn't have been that continuing sales chart like so many of the other games have. But I guess not.
The ZX Spectrum Next, a modern remake of the classic console, was unveiled on Kickstarter. This is their second Kickstarter they've done, so they've already had a run of these before. Mm-hmm. And it looks really, really cool. It's also
what, $500? I think
$300 or $400.
Yeah, it was a lot of monies,
especially for something when for half that you could probably build like a really cool Raspberry Pi unit.
Yeah, they could.
I don't want to be that guy that's like, "Why don't you just get a Raspberry Pi?" I know it's a trope.
Yeah,
but when we're talking hundreds of dollars, I'm kind of like, yeah, why don't you just get a Raspberry Pi? But for enthusiasts that want real original style hardware, this appears to be like old school new old school hardware in it. It is not emulating a ZX Spectrum. It is legit,
Yeah, I haven't seen like what the build quality or anything is like, but from just appearance, it looks like it is a similar caliber to what we've been seeing from Analog. And if the NT Mini can sell for $500
over and over again,
right?
Also, the Mini is the cheap one. The original Analog NT
was $1,000.
It was $1,000.
Yeah.
And they sold out of $1,000 NESs that damaged cartridges. If people don't remember, there were some issues.
Yeah.
RetroArch, GitHub, and BuildBot hacked. Devs forced to fall back on archived code from several months earlier, and the Android port of RetroArch is being removed from Google Play due to new rules that would affect core downloads. Not a good month for RetroArch.
Not a good week.
Whoever did that, fuck you.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah.
It's upsetting. Also, it makes you realize how I think a lot of us use this free open source software and we don't realize how delicate some of these situations are, because for this to happen and for people not to have more recent backups, at least local versions of stuff.
Well, a lot of people have come forward over the last few days since this happened and have been able to find some of the cores that were lost. Some people have found some of the compiled versions anyway that were lost for various platforms. So slowly some of this is starting to get recovered, but the code itself is the problem. That may not so easily be recovered. Now the second issue there, the one that they're having with Google Play, is that Google has changed the rules for applications downloaded through Google Play, where they can't then those separate applications can't download components separately. Those downloads have to come through Google Play, which means that they either have to release every individual core separately on Google Play, or they have to bundle the most used cores with the application, and that's all you get. So for now, they're the newest version before everything happened and it had to be taken down was available exclusively through their website and not through the Google Play Store. And only the older version was still available since it was kind of grandfathered into the rules. And they were still determining what the next version will look like should it be released on Google Play. And then all this happened. So who knows how.
And they're also still in the wake of the Steam release, I believe. Yeah. Still trying to work out all those details. Right. So not a great time for this to happen to RetroArch. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne Remaster will include Dante from the Devil May Cry series.
Oh boy.
Oh, how exciting. Good old Daint.
Good old Daint.
Recent reports state that Miyamoto would use the Star Fox development room as a smoking room and would distract the programmers with random conversations, thus solidifying our jackass Miyamoto joke from our old Zelda Oracle of Ages episode.
I loved this story. Did you read through the story about this?
I read bits of it, and they were just basically like he'd randomly show up and just start going on about trees.
Yes. That was my favorite quote, was the dev was just like, he would just come in and start telling us about trees. But then like the next sentence after that, he's like, it just shows what a genius he is.
Yeah, I know that this was probably interpreted as a little more disparaging than they probably meant it. But I'm just imagining Miyamoto chain smoking and doing dumb Seinfeld bits, like, oh, what's the deal with peanuts, right? Like, they're just like, oh my God, dude, we have so much work to do. He's like leaning on a keyboard and deleting code bases and just like complete.
Like somebody is trying to program a barrel roll and he's just walking over like, what kind of leaf you think this is?
Holding it in front of their face. Demons Ate My Neighbors, a spiritual successful to Zombies Ate My Neighbors from the team behind the new Toe Jam and Earl has been announced.
Yes.
So, cool.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, I think we talked about Zombies Ate My Neighbors on the LucasArts episode. If not, we really should have.
We've also got an episode of Classic Corner that you can go listen to that is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I think I did that one.
Oh, yeah?
I think that was the one that I did now that I can't even remember now.
Did the zombies eat your neighbors?
They ate something for sure.
That's good.
Apple removes Fortnite from the App Store. Google follows suit on Google Play. Epic sues Apple. Apple threatens to delist all games that use Unreal Engine, and the whole world loses their fucking minds.
Yeah.
And then basically everyone's forgotten Google because now Epic and Apple are just at each other's throats.
Right. Well, I think part of it is that the Epic is suing Apple, but I didn't see where Epic is suing Google, and I think that's because Epic can still release directly on Android without having to go through Google. So I
also wonder if maybe Google's not just coming to an agreement with them.
Possibly.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't even. We've had so much discussion in the Discord about it. I don't want to rehash any of it there.
And honestly, I don't care about Epic or Fortnite or really Apple that much.
Same.
So I don't have a horse in this race, as it were. But oh man, the drama storm has just taken over the internet.
I'm intensely interested from an industry standpoint,
right.
But regardless of what happens, I don't know that I'll personally be that upset in any event.
Yeah.
Unless they're like, and we're going to recall every Super Nintendo game. Like, I can't imagine I'd be, but yeah, it's definitely going to be, there's definitely some sort of shakeup coming.
Right.
This will not end well.
Today, before we started recording, I saw a news report where a bunch of news organizations are trying to back up Epic on this because they are sick of Apple taking money out of newspaper subscriptions that are done through the App Store. So suddenly all these other organizations are standing up and saying, I'm also upset about that. That's a thing we are allowed to be upset about.
Fortunately, it also means that they're standing next to Tim Sweeney.
Yeah, there's that.
Who's, I don't know. We'll see how it pans out.
Right.
Sports Story delayed until 2021, unfortunately. So
that unfortunate.
Sucks. Assassin's Creed director fired from Ubisoft following misconduct investigation. Ubisoft continuing to get rightfully hammered, as well they should be, for the awful, awful things they were doing. Holy crap. Resident Evil 7 becomes Capcom's second highest single SKU title ever, Behind Monster Hunter World, the SNES release of Street Fighter II remains at number 6.
Now, I'm really confused by this myself because they list the PS4, Xbox One, and PC versions of Resident Evil 7 as one SKU.
Mm-hmm.
But with other games that released on multi-platforms, they separate those into different SKUs. And I don't know if it's based on release window or maybe if there's enough of a delay between platforms it's considered a separate SKU. So I don't know how they come to this, but I do appreciate that the Super NES version of Street Fighter 2 does not seem to want to drop out of the top 10.
And finally, Retro Studios looking for a lead producer for Metroid Prime 4, which immediately everyone was upset about. And then a lot of other people came in to remind them that, hey, video games can have more than one lead producer. It doesn't necessarily mean that the project is tremendously far behind.
Right. Either way, it shows that there is work being at least considered.
True, which is more than we've heard other than that one logo they showed us one time.
Yeah, years ago now.
Yeah. But without further ado, let's get into the topic at hand. This week, we are doing a new format, a new episode format.
This time we're talking about sports.
Yeah, we're going to do all the Maddens, how many are there, like 5? Is there more than 5?
There's at least
we're just going to do 5 of them. It's our Bootcamp series. This is where the idea behind this series is that we are going to release genre boot camps for people that want to get into a genre and maybe don't know where to start, want recommendations, maybe don't quite understand what the genre is or what differentiates it or why they may like it.
Right.
Because we do get a lot of people in the Discord being like, hey, I want to get into fighting games, brawlers, RPGs, whatever it might be.
Right.
Like, where do I start? What's a good one? What should I play? What even are they? What's the appeal? I get this one a lot. What's the appeal? Why do you like this genre?
Yeah.
And
what I especially like is when people ask you about which JRPGs you recommend and then ask me about which brawlers I recommend. And I try my best to answer. But I have terrible answers.
So in that vein, this week we're doing JRPG Bootcamp. What is it? Where'd they come from? Why do we like them? What do we think you should play? Etc. Saturn, do you want to hit me with a synopsis, just briefly?
No.
Of what a JRPG is before we do listener feedback.
It's a video game.
It's a video game. Thank you.
No, it is a role-playing game that is usually developed in Japan, or at least in the style of role-playing games developed in Japan.
Which we'll define further.
Yeah, that kind of started in the late 80s.
As far as listener feedback, we got a lot. I did have to trim some of this down, so if your feedback was changed or parts of it were removed, I apologize.
It happens.
First up is Unicorn Dragon Babies.
That's a good name.
Who says, recommending a JRPG in this day and age can be tricky. The RPGs of old can deter new gamers by their lack of quality of life features that current-gen gamers expect. And if you're new to the JRPG genre, I think Persona 5 Royal is a great place to start. Strap in, everybody, because in classic JRPG style, the story is 100 plus hours. The genre gives you time to invest in the characters and the battle system. Long games aren't scary. More time to get cozy and min-max. Mrs. Elfman, who I assume is Danny Elfman's wife, wrote in and said, in winter 2007, my fiance and I decided to play Eternal Sonata with a friend. It was the rare JRPG that had local multiplayer. Right. Romantic era composer Frédéric Chopin lay upon his deathbed, suffering from tuberculosis and envisioning this lush fictional dreamscape inhabited by the player's party. The game's narrative turns weird at the end, but in all the good ways. Think Vanilla Sky by way of the 19th century. Yeah. 13 years later, Eternal Sonata remains one of my favorite games and one of my best memories with my fiance and our dear, dear friend.
That's one I've been meaning to get to for years.
Elk Neodafs writes in, I feel like I should shine a light on Breath of Fire 3. It's not short, it's not easy, but Boot Camp isn't short or easy either. Breath of Fire 3 exists in this wonderful in-between world of 2D sprites and 3D environments like Disgaea, Final Fantasy Tactics, Grandia, or more recently Octopath Traveler, an adherence to the classic tenets of the genre and a transitional push into modern expectations. Despite its subtle complexities, it is an excellent game for the first-time JRPG player. It showcases the best of the genre, the tried-and-true mechanics of classic JRPGs, and I could look at Tatsuya Yoshikawa's beautiful character designs all day. DamnChain87 says, to me, a JRPG is defined as a regular RPG, but stuffed to the brim with anime or other Japanese influences. So you have your RPG elements, leveling up system, one or more characters of varying classes, and fantasy setting set in any time. And then you mix in anime tropes. Feathery-haired protagonists, females of unrealistic proportions, a religion that turns out to be corrupt and or a cover for an evil deity, and about 74 dialogue pages worth of ellipses. JRPGs are a stain on humanity as a whole, and I love them. I cannot get away from them. Punish me, senpai.
Damn it.
And finally, Rygar Starkong writes in, I've always taken JRPG to mean Final Fantasy/Phantasy Star style JRPGs.
Fair enough.
Turn-based battles with complex menu systems and an overworld to traverse until you smack into an enemy that triggers a battle. I've always associated Western RPGs with games like SSI Dungeons and Dragons Gold and Silverbox games, Pools of Radiance, Hills Far, and the like. At least in the retro sense. In the 2020s, everything is so mashed together that I pretty much referred to everything as rogue Souls-likes with Metroidvania elements.
Right.
You're not wrong!
Yeah, that's about right.
And again, as a note on the format, this is something new we're trying. If you want us to do more of these boot camps, let us know, and let us know what genres you would like us to cover. And please note that almost every rule that we're going to cover has an exception, and games love to subvert genre expectations. So don't take any of this as written in stone for
also,
everything that we're going to...
Right.
Go ahead.
Also, if you do recommend genres for us to tackle in the future, keep in mind, we definitely have some very clear strengths and weaknesses. And if you ask us to cover like sports games or hardcore flight sims or something like that, there's a good chance we can't. You
don't play hardcore flight sims?
Not professionally, yeah, but not recreationally.
If we just read the manual for Falcon 4.0, we'd be here for 5 hours. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we would love to be able to cover everything, but at the end of the day, some things just aren't our cup of tea, and that's okay. Yep. But whatever you do want to hear from us, if you want to hear it from us, we can,
try.
In the grand scheme of Retro Warriors, between talking wizards and streaming and everything else we do, we can potentially find a way.
Yeah, and
it's possible.
Even if we can't,
I'll always say it's possible.
Right, even if we can't do it on the show, you could always pop into our Discord. If it's something that we don't know well enough to make an episode out of, and you ask us in the Discord, we'll at least try to bullshit out an answer.
Oh, yeah, and I'll damn near stream anything.
Right.
We should probably briefly talk about Dungeons & Dragons.
What's that?
And as far as JRPGs are concerned, it's kind of funneled through the Wizardry franchise, which is one of the first video games to have D&D style gameplay.
And Ultima.
And yeah, as well as Ultima. And its Japanese translation by ASCII Entertainment was very popular in the Japanese home market.
Right.
So these games, by virtue of being heavily D&D inspired, meant that D&D, by the transitive property, informed some early JRPG design. But as we'll get into later, the genre started before either of those games hit Japan and has diverged substantially since then.
I don't know if the genre started before they came to Japan, because it looks like Ultima and Wizardry were both in Japan by the early 80s.
We're going to talk about that because I have conflicting information and incomplete information, and could be and probably am wrong. But Saturn, why don't you break down the distinction between what we're dubbing Western RPGs? Some people also call them PC RPGs, although that's kind of a misnomer because now everything's on everything.
Right.
Or at the very least, everything's on Switch. But to specifically split the broader JRPG genre into two, we generally go Western and Japanese RPGs, if you want to break down that.
Yeah, like you mentioned, as recently as the late 90s, there was still a pretty strong division between, at the time we referred to them as console RPGs versus computer RPGs, because even the Western-developed console RPGs would mimic that Final Fantasy style. So it was a pretty clear distinction. You'd have your console style that was much simpler, menu-driven, and your PC style that was more closely emulating the Western tabletop games. And there was some overlap. You'd see FF7 on PC, and Diablo and Deus Ex made appearances on consoles. And after Morrowind released on Xbox, there was no distinction anymore. There were Western-style RPGs on consoles. There were eventually Japanese-style RPGs on PC. But Western RPGs, from my experience, tend to have a focus on player choice, branching storylines, and often seek to give the player more narrative agency. They and a lot of Western RPGs, even those not explicitly based on D&D, still base their game heavily on tabletop role-playing games and their systems as far as stat development and character growth. It feels more closely associated with the tabletop games.
And it should be noted that these days when people say Western RPG and JRPG, really what we mean is Western style RPG and Japanese style RPG, because the games can come from wherever they want. It's just the traditional styles of Western and Japanese RPGs, as they were in basically the late
90s,
80s,
really.
And early 90s, is really what that means.
Yeah.
Why don't you lead us through the... I'd say probably these are the main JRPG tropes. These are not all of them, and again, these are not hard and fast rules, but these are your big distinctions for, is this a JRPG?
Yeah. So first, you have much less character creation and more character narrative development in a JRPG. The characters are rarely generated by the player, and if they are, it's out of pre-cut cookie cutter templates, and almost always will have a pre-written story arc that they travel along throughout the adventure. Though the player will have choices, it rarely affects the narrative. Even when JRPGs do branch, it's usually like, here's your few set paths, and this is where it's not. Or there will be like, this is your obvious turning point, and you can either go to ending A or ending B. But sometimes you'll have a hero who's a blank slate character or a silent protagonist in an effort to let the player better project themselves onto the hero. But even then, their story is still written. It's not the player's choices that determines the character's personality. It is the narrative that determines that. So I hope you like being the hero type, because that's what you are today.
Specifically the prophesied hero of some type.
Almost certainly. Either that or the teenager woken up by his mother and then forced into a life of herodom.
I do notice that a lot of Western RPGs have this idea of you're just some like dirty peasant that you are going to rise to the occasion and become a hero. A lot of Japanese style RPGs are really big on like, no, you've had this deep down inside you. You have always been this. We just need to chisel away the outer layer, and here you are, the prophesied hero. You just need that sword or this crown or this power orb or whatever it is, and then suddenly you transform into the prophesied hero.
And I feel like it's not even just JRPGs. I think a lot of Japanese media seems to have this idea of but you are the descendant of the great heroes. Only you can do this. So, also, you have your random battles or encounters, which is very different than most Western RPGs. Battles will appear at random, sometimes with no warning. Sometimes you can see an enemy before you encounter them. Usually has a different, sometimes drastically different graphical interface than standard exploration. The earliest JRPGs often went with a first-person perspective, which really emulates wizardry, I guess. As more recent games, you can see everything going on, but even then, it still seems to be in a pocket world that is separate from what you're exploring. And the combat, sometimes it's active in real time, sometimes it's turn-based, but the battles are almost always separated from the overworld. And some of the separation will leave you on that same plane, and it just goes into battle mode. but it's still clearly a distinct user interface.
Gameplay wise, like Chrono Trigger is a good example where you get into a battle and you're still in the overworld, but really the whole gameplay system changes. Like it's like now you've got menus and you're not playing the same type of game. As opposed to something with like RPG elements like The Legend of Zelda or Diablo or something where your combat is streamlined with your regular exploration.
Yeah, and when you do see that in a Japanese style RPG, it is the distinct action RPG genre, which feels very different. And of course, all encounters seem to be rewarded with your standard gold and experience in almost every JRPG. Like in a lot of the Western RPGs that I have played anyway, sometimes enemies will drop gold or an item, but it is not a guaranteed thing, whereas in Japanese RPGs it is always guaranteed that if an enemy will drop gold, it will drop gold. Stats are generally predetermined or at least quasi-randomized and will go up at every level up. And experience is almost exclusively gained via combat and almost never via quests or exploration, which does sometimes happen in Western style RPGs.
Western style RPGs are very big on the quest turn in. You've done your quest, turn it in to get your reward and your experience. It's very different in that regard.
The only Japanese RPGs that I've seen that have done that have been MMOs, and those are clearly just copying EverQuest or WoW.
And I would say an MMO is almost a completely very different derivative genre to begin with.
Definitely. You usually have very linear exploration in a JRPG. So when you do enter the grand open world, even though it looks grand and open, you're still kind of guided along a specific path by a bunch of locked gates and guarded bridges and whatnot, so that you still have to go through the narrative in order. So you will always end up going the same path. And along that line, everything is very heavily focused on the story. A Japanese RPG is much more interested in telling you a story, sometimes than even letting you play the game. It is not
I've noticed.
It is not uncommon, especially in some of the more recent ones, to have 5 minutes straight of just dialogue boxes. And which is,
I like that you said 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes.
that's less common unless the game is made by Hideo Kojima. Like somebody had mentioned in the listener feedback that Persona 5 clocks in at over 100 hours. It wasn't that long ago that was strange. And even today, a lot of JRPGs still don't hit 100 hours. That's
I'd say the 40 to 60 hour mark tends to be where the majority of stuff falls. And whenever, because here's the thing that you'll notice when you talk JRPGs with people is they'll go, oh, that one was short. A JRPG that is 20 hours or less is referred to as short.
Like Suikoden or Chrono Trigger. Short
I've had people go, oh yeah, Final Fantasy VII is short. You can do it in less than 30 hours. Less than 30 hours is not short to me. That's a lot of game for a guy that plays shmups and brawlers. That's a ton of game for me. That's 3 times longer than most of the games I play.
And a lot of the Super NES and early PS1 RPGs were still in that 20 to 40 hour range. That seemed to be
the
common.
PS1 era is where it really was like.
When
oh no, they're huge now.
When Dragon Quest VII came out and they proudly advertised this game can reach 100 hours. Everybody was like, that's insane. And Xenogears 2, I think, also advertised that it was over 80 hours of gameplay. And then it became a race. Like every JRPG after that was like, no, I can hit 100 hours.
The PS2 era was probably the worst offender as far as I personally feel as far as padding JRPGs out.
It's because they all wanted to hit 100 hours.
And now that I think about it, when we get down to our recommendations, as much as the PS2 was very much a JRPG machine, I don't think either of us has any PS2 games on our list of recommendations.
Probably not.
And I did have to cut some listener recommendations just for time, and I don't know that any listeners recommended PS2 JRPGs, which is so weird because at the time everyone's like, PS2 is the ultimate JRPG machine. There's hundreds of them.
I don't even think most of my PS2 games are JRPGs.
Yeah, it was a weird era. Let's talk history. In I do want to make a note that a lot of this data is anecdotal and heavily depends on what you call a JRPG. So consider this a general historical overview of the lead up to what we consider JRPGs,
Right.
and it is by no means a definitive history. So in Japan in 1982, you had 3 what I'm going to call proto-RPGs come out. I've heard some people say they're RPGs. I've looked at the games. I'd say they're games with RPG elements.
Right.
And that is Underground Exploration by Koei, Spy Daisakusen
Yeah.
by Pony Canyon, and Dragon and the Princes by Koei.
Yeah.
Now, in this early 80s era, Enix, Square, Nihon Falcom, and Koei would all produce visual novels.
Right.
And that's a different show, but it's
Right.
worth noting for bringing a narrative focus to Japanese gaming.
Yeah.
A lot of this era is considered lost and hard to find, and like much of the 80s Japanese PC game market, there's just not a lot of data, release dates.
Right.
I mean, these are games that often sold, units numbering in the just thousands.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Right.
A notable visual novel was the Portopia serial murder case by Yuji Horii for Enix. Portopia is frequently referred to as the protogenesis of the visual novel genre.
Right.
But this is kind of getting into heavy story focus for JRPGs.
Right.
Or
For Japanese gaming.
early Japanese games, I
Right.
should say. And then if we fast forward a little bit, we have the Tower of Druaga, which came out,
Right.
which was, at this point, a trend had started to emerge that would often combine real-time elements with these kind of pseudo-RPG elements that Druaga solidified.
And I would say
and
that Zelda also popularized it. The first Zelda game
Absolutely.
also kind of combined some of those elements in such a
I'd
way.
say Druaga, at least in Japan, brought it into kind of the wider consciousness,
Right.
and then Zelda really was like, no, we're going to make it a thing.
Right.
Dragon Slayer, Falcom's Dragon Slayer, had a similar approach as Druaga, but for home PCs instead of the arcade. And again, in the early 80s, there was a I don't want to say huge, but at least a thriving and healthy home PC gaming market in Japan.
Right.
Like Druaga, it also counts wizardry among its influences.
Yeah.
And then we get into kind of some weird territory because Wizardry and Ultima both released in 1981, but they wouldn't be ported to the Japanese market for a little while.
Yeah, I found some records that showed a Japanese version of Wizardry as early as 83, but it might not have been official. Same with a Japanese language version of Ultima in 83 that they said definitively was not official. So
The best I can find as far as official releases is I'm guessing, based on context clues, that they came out around 85.
okay.
I'm really just going off
But
of
I
data
also know
I'm finding.
a lot of people imported Western PC games.
True. Also true.
And there were
because,
a lot of-
Japanese primary school teaches English,
Right.
so it wouldn't be that absurd for someone to play something like Ultima, which really doesn't have a ton of dialogue
Right.
anyway.
And then also there was a lot of unofficial clones of Wizardry and Ultima really early on. Notably, Hank Rogers, the guy that brought Tetris to Japan and brought Tetris to Nintendo, he had made a Ultima clone on, I want to say it was the NEC PC-88 in like 82, and that got some attention and started getting people to want to play the Apple II versions of Wizardry and Ultima.
And I would like to amend my statement. I said potentially in 85. What I meant to say was by 85 they had been out.
Yes.
Because I found from a 1985 issue of PC Gamer, I have a quote, and it is, quote, "There's no denying that Wizardry, and to a similar extent Richard Garriott's Ultima, had a huge impact on JRPGs. In the September-October issue of Computer Gaming World," this is a quote from PC Gamer quoting a 1985 issue of Computer Gaming World.
Gotcha.
And the writer goes on, "In the September-October issue of Computer Gaming World, columnist Roe R. Adams describes Woodhead and Garriott's fame in the East as, we're now a third nested quote deep, both Wizardry and Ultima have huge followings in Japan. The computer magazines cover Richard Garriott like our National Enquirer would cover a television star.
Right.
When Robert Woodhead of Wizardry fame was recently in Japan, he was practically mobbed by autograph seekers.
Yeah.
So for this to have been in a 1985 issue of CGW, which I went and read the article and verified that it was in the 85 September-October issue, that means they've been out for probably at least a year if we were to guess.
Right. I also found a article that said that Satoru Iwata, who famously had that Commodore PET that he had programmed on, which was not a popular machine in Japan, he had imported a copy of, I can't remember if they said Ultima or Wizardry or both, and he was apparently a big fan of the Western RPG genre because of that, and because of having that Commodore.
So as far as when Ultima and Wizardry started influencing the Japanese game market, it's just kind of hard to say.
Right.
But it's not hard to say that they did absolutely heavily influence the Japanese game market.
Yeah, you can see plenty of interviews where people say it too.
Yeah. When that started happening, it's kind of anyone's guess.
Right.
But yeah.
There could be very clear documentation in Japanese literature that we can't read.
Right. That we just can't track down. And that kind of brings us into the next era of Japanese RPGs, which is the Dragon Quest / Final Fantasy era, which I know is covering several years.
Right.
But we're just lumping things at this point.
It basically covers 1987 to today.
Yeah, so basically, we're out of the early 80s, we're covering late 80s is when JRPGs kind of are solidified in Japan. Yeah. Before Dragon Quest, Yuji Horii worked with Chunsoft's Koichi Nakamura to port the Portopia serial murder case to the Famicom, and the lessons learned in doing so were instrumental in forming the menu system later used in Dragon Quest.
Right.
Many trends, ports, and experimental combining of genres would eventually lead up to Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy kind of solidifying the JRPG and its tropes.
Right.
Being, like the tropes we talked about before, random overworld battles, separate battle gameplay systems, heavy focus on, well, maybe not heavy focus on story, heavy focus on story for a home console for the time.
Yeah.
We'll say that.
Yeah. Narrative-driven gameplay. We can say that.
Yes. The original Dragon Quest sold over 2 million copies in Japan.
Which Enix actually said was a disappointing number.
That's insane.
That was not what they were hoping it would sell. It wasn't until Dragon Quest III that the series really exceeded all sales expectations.
Final Fantasy shipped 520,000 units in Japan. I believe that's just the Famicom version.
Right.
So you can see the trajectory of these early, sort of proto-RPGs and visual novels with, narrative focus kind of leading into the public being receptive to what we see as JRPGs cropping up in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Eventually, Dragon Quest was huge. Everything started cloning Dragon Quest. There's a bunch of Dragon Quest clones. It's
hard to name a Japanese developer of the late 80s and not know at least one Dragon Quest clone that they put out.
And then this dovetails into Super Nintendo RPGs or JRPGs, which are often considered the golden age of the JRPG genre.
Right.
This is when things really started to get full story length. For lack of a better phrasing.
You also started to see some early cinematic presentation where you would have these cutscenes where characters act things out in a way that the earlier systems tried but couldn't quite do.
So you've got Final Fantasy 4 and 6, Chrono Trigger, Mother 2, Breath of Fire 1 and 2, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore, Star Ocean, Super Mario RPG. The list goes on and on and on and on. Some of the still today most celebrated JRPGs of all time were on the Super Nintendo.
Right.
Final Fantasy VII probably marks when JRPGs entered the mainstream Western consciousness.
Yes.
It's the first time that I remember seeing people that either normally didn't play games or normally only played sports games being like, hey, have you heard about this Final Fantasy VII thing?
It both made me very happy and very upset.
I could see that.
Because, suddenly...
We have this thing where you're like, this is my thing that you've, been ridiculing me for, and now you want to do it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that.
All these people that used to be like, why do you play your stupid game that the dude just swings his sword on one side of the screen and the monster's supposed to get hurt? That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, they're like, how do I get Shiva?
Yeah. I'll never tell you. But then after that, JRPGs did continue to explode in popularity in the West. And explode is kind of a loaded term compared to their previous performance, because despite what people seem to remember, JRPGs were never big sellers in the West, even on Super Nintendo, during what people consider quality-wise to be the golden age of the genre.
Now, the PS1 is where it started exploding. That's
right.
when the sales numbers really got ridiculous.
So they continued to become popular in the West, and by the time the PS2 rolled around, it was just a widely and openly accepted RPG subgenre.
But at the time when the PS2 released, it wasn't even considered a subgenre. It was just RPG. You didn't...
Right, it was console RPGs, because you couldn't get PC RPGs on your PS2.
Yeah, if you said RPG on PlayStation, everybody knew you were talking about a JRPG. If you were somehow talking about a Western-style RPG on the PlayStation, and you showed it to them and said, this is an RPG, people would be like, it's not an RPG. I don't see any menus. No. I don't see any cat girls and wizard hats. I don't know what you're talking about.
And the genre has kind of gone in and out of mainstream favor in the West. It went out really after the PS2. The PS3, 360 era feels like kind of a darker period for JRPGs. It seems to be rebounding and coming back around again these days.
Which I appreciate.
With Persona and Dragon Quest 11 and Final Fantasy 15 kind of, leading the way for that. So as far as long-term Western popularity, it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I
don't know that it's ever going to reach that peak that it hit in the PS1 era again.
We would need another Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah.
We would need something.
We just got another Final Fantasy 7.
True. Well, I mean, yeah. We would need something that is again, so different, so refreshing, so engaging, and also has because the thing about Final Fantasy VII is, we knock it now for being Lego people,
right?
But at the time, it was for PS1, it was visually stunning. Yeah. We were like, oh my god. Oh, yeah. And so I don't know. We'll see if we get there.
Yeah.
Big modern examples right now: Persona 5, Final Fantasy 15, Dragon Quest 11. Saturn put Trails of Cold Steel 3 in here.
It is modern. It did come out this year.
It is technically a modern example.
Yeah.
Yes. So they're in a
because I was trying to think
where,
about it, because Persona 5 a few years old now, Final Fantasy 15 5 years old now, I think. Dragon Quest 11 is 2 or 3 years old now. There's not a ton of huge notable JRPGs that have reached the West within the last year or two.
True.
So I was.
Well, it's okay because I'm still playing all of them because they're so fucking long.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our recommendations. We've kind of split this into what we would recommend for new players to the genre and what we would recommend for maybe returning players looking for something different, or maybe people that are like, yeah, I played Super Nintendo RPGs, but I haven't played any in recent years. What's good now?
Yeah. I really wanted to break this down to like NES era, Super NES era, this kind of JRPG. I could have really broken this down, but I was like, that's probably overwhelming for this type of episode.
For a boot camp, yes. Maybe we'll have a JRPG 102 episode. Of whatever, I don't know.
4 years later.
We'd have to keep with our boot camp theme, so it'd have to be like a JRPG deployment. I don't know what we'd even call it.
Yeah.
In retrospect, maybe calling it JRPGs 101 would have been a better name.
It's too late now. We've come too far.
Oh, shit. Pablo, edit in what JRPGs 101 over every time I said boot camp and every boot camp related joke we made. Go ahead with your recommendations. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so for new players, Dragon Quest 11 is probably one of the easiest places to jump into the genre. Bravely Default, also a great place to get started, just because it's a little simpler, but it does build up in technical ability as you go on. Chrono Trigger is 25 years old, and I would still say it's one of the easiest to sit down and play games in the genre. I would also say Suikoden. Suikoden 1 specifically, but either of the first two Suikodens.
Which is, in air quotes, JRPG short, meaning less than 20 hours.
Right, yeah. The first one you can easily do in 15-ish hours. The second one might be closer to 30 hours. But they're both also pretty easy games because your experience gain scales along with your character. So you always stay at about the appropriate level. And also occasionally it breaks up the action with little real-time strategy bonus games. So it's a nice one to to jump in with. And it's available on at least PS3 and Vita.
Yeah, Suikoden's it's a PlayStation Classic on PS3 and
That's
Vita. Chrono Trigger's on
everything.
You've got the DS port, Super Nintendo. It's on SNES. Is it on SNES Online? It's not.
No,
is it?
But it is on Steam.
There you go.
And it's
Bravely Default, I think, is
exclusive on the 3DS.
Trapped on 3DS. Yeah. And Dragon Quest XI is currently on everything and Game Pass.
Yes, it's going to be on Game Pass in a couple of months. So,
what about for returning players looking for something new and exciting and different?
Yeah, so if you haven't played anything in a while, I would say Persona 5 is great to jump to, just because it's got some interesting turn-based mechanics and the story is a bit anime. You have to be prepared for that.
It's a little bit. Yeah.
It's a lot of anime, but the characters are interesting at least, and the gameplay really carries it. The battle system is really interesting. Also, I'd throw the entire Legend of Heroes series, specifically the Trails sub-series in there. Yeah. Even though the Trails series has been going on for 15 years now, they're just really good quality. They've got a great narrative that's about to branch into a 10th game. And again, really good turn-based, strategy-based combat. So it's a nice departure from your more simplistic, standard Dragon Quests and Final Fantasies.
Yeah. For my recommendations, you're obviously the expert here for the JRPGs, so everything you've recommended, I wholeheartedly will back.
No.
Dragon Quest XI would definitely have made my list, as would have Chrono Trigger.
And with Dragon Quest XI about to release on Game Pass, and there being almost no JRPGs on the Xbox, that's an excellent place for Xbox fans to jump in, to be able to really try out JRPGs.
My picks, I would say Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls, just because I know a lot of people are like, no, I have to start everything at the very beginning, no matter how bad it is. And I want you people that are like that to know that I understand you.
Right, I understand.
And I got you covered. Dawn of Souls is the first Final Fantasy, and it is one of the best versions of the first Final Fantasy, and you can still get even the original GBA cartridge pretty darn cheap.
That said, just for people who have never played either of the two series, Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, every game in the series does not narratively connect to the other games in the series. So
also true, and also a good point.
So you can start wherever you want. The first three Dragon Quests have a loose narrative that ties them together, but it is not necessary to play the others to appreciate them.
And not only that, but more importantly than not even following each other's story, games in the series don't generally even build on each other's mechanics. Very often they replace entire mechanical systems with completely new ones. So it's not like you're not going to know what's happening, because none of us know what's happening, because they've now replaced the job system with the materia system, with the whatever the new system they have.
Yep.
So don't feel like you're going to be behind story-wise or mechanically jumping anywhere into Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and feel free to jump around the series from there too, because you never know which one you'll end up really clicking onto.
I would also recommend for new players, Zeboyd Games' Breath of Death 7 and Cthulhu Saves the World. These are kind of weird games, but I put them on my list, even though they're specifically, I don't want to call them, I guess they'd be parody games. They are parodies of JRPGs, but they're only a few hours long, they're only a couple dollars, and they are still relatively interesting, fun, simple JRPGs. They've got the traditional menu system, the overworld, the battles. So if maybe you want something a little more lighthearted, and you just want to see if you kind of like the mechanical feel of like random battles and overworlds and that kind of thing, then it's a easy way to kind of dip your toe in and get through a whole game in a long afternoon.
Right. And
instead of going, okay, let me set aside 100 hours for Persona 5 so I can get into JRPGs.
Yeah.
That's a big bite to chew.
And also, on the note of those two, the third and fourth Penny Arcade games, the On the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, I believe it was.
Absolutely.
Volumes 3 and 4 were also developed by Zeboyd and use that same game engine that Breath of Death 7 and Cthulhu Saves the World uses. And they are also fun and simple and easy to just pick up and play in small bites.
Yeah. I would also recommend... and this is, I for some reason, this feels like stretching it, but it's not. I would recommend just about any of the Pokemon games.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, those are RPGs. Yeah.
Again, if you're maybe like, hey, I'm not so hardcore into anime stories, but I want to see if I like this whole turn-based menu-driven battle system with random battles thing and leveling up. I want to check it out mechanically, but I don't know if I'm totally sold on some spiky-haired dude that I have to listen to him moan for 150 hours. Then Pokemon's a great place to be.
There's a lot of spiky-haired dudes in Pokemon.
Well, there's less. There's a lot less compared to like Final Fantasy and anything Akira Toriyama drew art for.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So for returning players, I only really have 2 recommendations. My first one would be Half Minute Hero, which is really just kind of straight up making fun of JRPGs top to bottom.
Yeah, it's a great deconstruction of the genre.
It's fun. It turns everything on its head. It intentionally makes the game played in 30-second increments. Yeah. Like the entire conceit is let's make fun of JRPGs, and it does a very good job of that.
And the localization is brilliant. Like the dialogue is just great.
And it's on Steam. It was originally PSP, but it's also on Steam.
And on Xbox
It's always on sale for a couple bucks. Yeah. And my other recommendation for returning players looking for something a little different would be the Star Ocean remake. The remake of the original Star Ocean. I've been playing it on Switch. I'm sure is it on Steam? It's on Steam,
it is not. It is on Switch and PS4.
Well, play it on those then. It's really fun if you're like, hey, I do want to play these Super Nintendo RPGs. I remember playing a bunch of them, and I want to get into something, but I want it to be a little different. I don't just want fantasy. I and I do want some quality of life improvements like fast forward and being able to run super fast and things. Star Ocean Remake has you covered. Saturn said it before. It's pretty much Star Trek: The Next Generation if it was smushed into a JRPG.
Yeah.
And that's good in my opinion.
It's like if the crew of the Enterprise just happened upon a JRPG planet, got marooned there, and then spend the next 50 hours trying to convince themselves we can't let them know that we're from the future, and then immediately tell everyone they're from the future.
Yeah. If Gene Roddenberry was tasked with making a Final Fantasy game, it would be the first Star Ocean.
Yeah, pretty much. It would be the first 4 Star Oceans.
And I'd also like to make hardware recommendations for people that are like, hey, I'm kind of getting into JRPGs. I enjoy them. It's the end of a hardware system cycle. We're going into the next cycle. Yeah. I can pick stuff up cheap right now. What should I be looking at to have the best, most diverse array of JRPGs, assuming I end up enjoying them? And I would say for modern JRPGs, the PS4 is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, kind of.
The games are usually JRPG. It's very much a JRPG first system. A lot of games come out there and eventually trickle down to other systems, often with sometimes inferior ports.
Yeah.
But the PS4 seems to be the premier JRPG system.
Yeah.
This generation and last generation.
And Sony has been since at least the PS1.
I'd also personally recommend the Switch as a secondary choice. Yeah. It's getting a lot of good ports, and portability is very, very nice to have for very, very long games.
Also, some of the older JRPGs that are getting re-releases seem to be getting Switch re-releases before the PS4 for some reason.
Yeah, they're definitely making it to PS4, but yeah, and you've got a lot of good stuff. You've got Star Ocean Remake, you've got Grandia, you've got almost all the Final Fantasies, you've got several Dragon Quests at this point. It's a great place. I know you have some of the Trails of Cold Steel games are on Switch.
Cold Steel 3 just came out. That's the only one so far.
So you've got a lot of options for JRPGs on the Switch, and again, being portable is really nice.
Yeah, I would also add to that a gaming PC. Because
and I have
because there is a lot of older JRPGs that have gotten official Steam ports, as well as a lot of them been released on GOG as well. For a little while there, Falcom was almost exclusively making PC games, so you can see the original versions of a lot of those games on PC, and plus, of course, there's emulators. Those are on your PC.
True,
too.
and I put in the end of my recommendations that if you want a good mixture of retro and modern RPGs, a PC is probably your best bet.
Right.
Do keep in mind that Japanese developers often release buggy and broken PC ports.
Sega wouldn't do that.
So if you're the kind of person that's like, hey, I don't really do PC gaming because I hate tinkering with stuff.
Right.
maybe you'll shy away from that. But if you're like, hey, I don't mind installing some mods to fix my version of whatever game I'm playing, Nier Automata or one of the Tales games or whatever, which we didn't even talk about the Tales games. Then PC's a great choice. Also, if you're just wanting, go ahead.
Yeah. Also, you have to fix the PC ports of the first 2 Cold Steel games because they really kind of phoned in those ports.
Japanese developers and JRPGs in particular seem to really kind of suffer on PC, at least in recent years.
Right. Always. Just always.
For retro JRPGs, I'd say it's probably a tie between SNES and PS1. I would personally lean Super Nintendo if I was talking to someone wanting to get into the genre, since there are so many games that either started there or entered their modern design incarnations there.
I'd agree with that.
The PS1 is just great, but in some ways you kind of can't even appreciate, well, not can't. It's more difficult to appreciate some of the JRPGs on PS1 if you did not play the Super Nintendo incarnations. And in a lot of instances, I would personally consider the Super Nintendo incarnations better games anyway.
Right. There are some excellent RPGs worth exploring on the PS1.
Totally.
But aside from a few really well-known exceptional standouts, a lot of even the cherished RPGs on the PS1 have aged, and they have aged in not just in gameplay but also in narrative, where it feels like they take forever to do anything.
And it just boils down to, like, I'll take Chrono Trigger over Chrono Cross. I'll take Final Fantasies 4 and 6 over Final Fantasy 7, you know, and that's the delineation you're making. I'll take Earthbound over whatever the PS1 version of that would be.
There was not even close.
Moon, but that wasn't even in the US. Right. I have no idea.
But
also, either one,
the downside
and PS1 are both.
The PS1 as well is that because the genre started to reach popularity, we started to see a lot more of the shovelware RPGs come out in the West.
True.
So you need to be pretty careful when you start digging into PS1 JRPGs, because even though there are some excellent examples like FF7, like the Lunar games and Grandia 1 and several others, but there's also a lot of shovelware on the PS1, not just in RPGs, but definitely in RPGs too.
But yeah, between emulators and Steam and ports and everything, if you don't mind tinkering and fixing problems and installing mods, then PC's a great place to be. Otherwise, if you're just like, I don't want to mess with it, I'd go PS4 and Super Nintendo, and you'll probably be pretty well set.
Oh, yeah.
As far as final thoughts, JRPGs are fun, and you should play them. And they aren't all 400-hour affairs with tons of min-maxing. Many of them are streamlined and modernized and updated in ways that respect the player's time and subvert expectations. Unless you want that, and you do want a very traditional 400-hour affair, in which case JRPGs still have you covered.
Just let me know, and I'll tell you which 400-hour games to play.
Yeah, for every half-minute hero that I enjoy, there's a Trails of Cold Steel that Saturn enjoys.
There's an entire Trails series of 9 games. And for me, it's the genre has always been more about narrative than it has been about gameplay. Because if you look at the evolution of the genre, the gameplay has often been all over the place. Yeah. There's while there are some excellent games in the genre that have just amazing gameplay, I personally say that if you aren't ready to at least feign interest in the narrative, you might have a hard time getting into the genre.
True. I struggle with JRPG narratives because they are often tropey and a little long in the tooth.
Sometimes.
And even I still find a lot to enjoy in the genre. As much as I complain about them, I still find a lot to enjoy.
Well, you also habitually don't finish games, though.
I don't know why you have to put me on the spot. I don't know why you have to hurt me. It's not a backlog, it's a library.
Yeah, that's right.
That's an important distinction. But that's JRPGs. We hope you enjoyed. We hope you enjoyed our JRPG 101/Bootcamp. But it is the time of the month in which we thank all of our patrons. Yes. These are all of the people that support the show at patreon.com/retrowarriors. They get fun things like our spinoff show, Talking Wizards, our After Hours business planning show. They get early access to episodes. They get to have orange names in our Discord. That's new.
That's new.
Which is great.
Isn't it gold? I thought it was supposed to be gold.
It was yellow, and then everyone was like, this is ugly, and I made it like a orangey kind of goldish color.
Yeah, the new one looks more like gold and less like yellow.
Everyone likes that better.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, without further ado, we'd like to thank the following patrons in alphabetical order.
And these are all their absolute real names.
Starting with 10100111010.
A belly alien named Kuato.
A huge Earthbound fan excited to try it for the first time.
Adam Williams.
A discontinued cigarette.
Alex.
A marlin.
I'm getting all the normal names. Anders Dahlqvist.
Angle Zebra.
A sphincter says what?
Austin Wheeler.
Blaster Keaton.
Brandon Johnson.
Brian Kim.
Brian Guido Hassin.
Burger Champ.
Cajun Boz.
Captain Koloth.
Casey McGinty.
Chris Hickson.
Chris Minochi.
Chris Ruppersberg.
Chuck Angeline.
Cocolicious Crisp.
Craig C.
Chris Forbes.
Dadcore.
Danny Spiteri.
Dave Nelson.
David Martin.
David Nethery.
Definitely not a bot, Marlowe221.
Dig Dougie.
Dr. Jason Tharp.
Ebucel.
Edward Majewski Jr.
El Malaguero.
Elk Neodaffs.
Eric G.
Face it, you have nothing that can withstand the phenomenal strength of my Blue Eyes Ultimate Venus.
He's true. Fardo Mario Man.
Floopy Noopy Noops Esquire.
FreeCodeCamp.org. Quincy Larson.
Fry Scungen.
Garrett Roberts.
Gary Heather.
George McBain.
Gold Leader.
Grady Haynes.
Our producer Guy.
Harry Pry.
Hey kids, Santa isn't real. That's just some guy in a suit.
Hi Ross.
I hate Trog.
I'm a moist.
Ivan Cervantes.
Evelyn Belchev.
Jacob Zgella.
Jason Frednick and his frog Fred.
J-Dub the Gamer.
Jerry Voz.
John Fry.
Jurgen.
Justin made me buy 2 CRTs.
Carl.
Keith Courage, a.k.a. TurboGrafx fan.
Keith Reynolds.
Kevin Meyer.
Keo Killa.
Lachlan Heatherton.
Leo Lobato.
Let us cling 6 feet apart while dressed as beekeepers.
Logan Sharp.
Mark Meredith.
Martin Burke.
Matt Kovacs.
Metroid Prime 4, Pig of the Sounder.
Metroidvania is a genre.
Michael Castro.
Michael Hawes.
Michael Cabetti.
Michael Winters.
Mike Morse.
Millie's homemade ice cream is the best ever.
M. Pitts.
Mr. Jiggyfly.
Neil Hayes.
Nick Brown.
Nick Mellon.
Novocaine FS.
Pogs are back.
Poop Ass.
Puff Puff, please.
Retro Video Game Zone Jason.
Retro Warriors gave me herpes.
I believe
you can't prove that.
Retro Warriors is proudly sponsored by Ito's Fuck Toast. Start your day fucking great with some great fucking toast.
Retro Gamer Randomness.
Rick Jackson.
Rob Powers.
Robert Fusco.
Robert Vieira Jr.
Scott Page.
Sean S.
Sharp Cheddar.
Sean Gavin.
Sean Schaller.
Spokes.
Sponsored by Honest Bob's Dildo and Butt Plug Emporium.
Steve Duke.
STG the Mr. Guy.
Suffer UM.
The Butt Witch.
The captain of a ship is in charge of the ship.
The counselor was good, and we may pull through this. I love you, Justin.
The Techno Funk Boy.
The New Craft.
The Watt 624.
Tiger Driver.
Todd Bass.
Tyma Hughes.
Video Rangers Podcast.
Vince the ShamWow Guy.
Vitamin D.
What is a name? A miserable little pile. Oops, I just crapped my pants.
What is a name? A miserable little pile of letters?
William Owens.
Wyatt.
You and your friends are dead. Game over.
Zach Huge, thanks.
And Zaventorian.
are all the wonderful people who support the show financially, again, at patreon.com/Retro Warriors, and we wish you would do it too! Or at the very least, rate and review the show on iTunes. A little bit of end of the show excitement. My caffeine kicked in.
Yay!
Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with some more stuff of some sort. Anyway, thanks for listening, and as always, let us cling together.